Hello, welcome to the broadcast. Took me a minute to get everything situated tonight, and I apologize for that. I was having some issues with my webcam, and it needed some sorting, but it looks like we're doing okay at this point. Let me just make sure that we're streaming properly. Looks like YouTube has us, or excuse me, Facebook. YouTube is working on it. It says we have an excellent connection. Got a viewer on. That's good. All right. Let's see how things are. Holy smokes. Sorry about the late start. Had some technical difficulties, but I think we're in good shape here. That's good. All right. I'm going to get my notes pulled up in front of me, and we will dive into the October 30th, 2020 full moon in Aries guided releasing practice. I'm sorry I missed all of you for the new moon just a couple weeks ago. I did not do a broadcast, and I did expect to. I apologize for that. But welcome. My aim, of course, with the new and full moon guided broadcast really is to provide guidance on how we can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to affect our lives in a positive way. Really, we want to learn to be proactive about our transits and how we use astrology rather than reactive. And there's a really strong reactive energy around this full moon. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. I'm sorry, it's a little bit hazy in here. I'm going to have to take a drink. I was just preparing the space and burning some incense before I got the hardware all situated, so it's a little smoky because I can't just open the window because it's cold and wintry here. So tonight, of course, as always, we're using the Fake and Bradley Sidereal Zodiac. And so if you need to look up your sidereal sign placements, there is a handy dandy online calculator available at the website that you can use for free. I feel a bit weird here. I don't have my keyboard set up either. I'm gonna pop this in the comments, hopefully. Oh wait, everybody's waiting. It looks like it's all waiting for me to go live here. I don't want to add a title. I thought we had gone live on Facebook, but apparently there was a button I needed to push, so I apologize for that. It's a little bit different than last time I streamed. So, sorry Facebook, you're joining us a little bit late, but I'm about to drop the link here for the Sidereal chart calculator at the mystickphysick.com website. This might interrupt our stream briefly, and I'll put this in the YouTube comments as well once it's done posting to Facebook. Okay, looks good. So, because like I said, tonight we're using the Fake and Bradley Sidereal Zodiac, and so you're going to want your sidereal natal chart in front of you so we can work with your natal blueprint as we go through the releasing practice. And we'll kind of do this in 3 stages. First part of the broadcast, I'm going to go over this particular full moon. I might have said new moon a moment ago, but it's a full moon. It's a full moon in Sidereal Aries. And the first part of the broadcast, we're going to talk a little bit more detail about the astrology of this new full moon and what it's like and how we can kind of work with it, or at least what we can expect out of it. In part 2, I will briefly run down which house this is falling into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign and what the themes of that house are, in case you're not super familiar with the house systems. And then in the third part of the broadcast, what we'll do is we will talk a little bit more in depth about the themes and archetype of Aries. And I have some prompts for you this evening, some fresh new prompts to go over with for the releasing part, for letting go, right? So I just want to say it's good to be back. Thank you. I'm glad to be back. I did miss you at the new moon, and I apologize for that. The new moon that we had, I believe, in Virgo. Busy with things and life and stuff that has changed and come up for me here. Some of you kind of know already that I do occasionally do election-related work, and we are in full swing of election season, although the good news is that it's almost over. And so the nice thing there is that in not too much longer, just a few more days, maybe a week or so, because I think I'm going to take a day off once the election is over. I'll be back in the swing of astrology full time, and kind of diving back into all this with you. We'll relaunch the Monday broadcasts, and I'll have news for you about the progress on the 2021 astrological planner, because I was releasing an astrological planner and I'm a little bit behind schedule with that this year. So welcome to the broadcast. Why does it look like we are not quite streaming properly on YouTube? It says stream finished. I wonder if I can restart the stream on YouTube. Maybe I'll just upload the finished edited stream. I don't know. Now it says we're waiting for live video on Facebook. Oh no, what's going on? The software says we stopped streaming. Okay, at least we're recording. So, could not access the specified channel or stream key. Come on. Yeah, I'm sure I want to start the stream. All right. Maybe this will pick up where we left off. Let's take a look. Hopefully. Facebook looks like it's going to pick it back up as soon as the feed reconnects. Hopefully YouTube will too. I don't know what happened there. Maybe it's because I posted the link in the comments. I apologize for that. Gosh. Makes me want to go back to broadcasting from my phone, y'all. I started with the streaming software at the beginning of this year, and I'm just, it's making me crazy. Seems like things never quite work right, and I'm not sure what it is I have going on that makes stuff never quite work right. Anyway, let's see if we can reconnect to YouTube. Oh, maybe. And we're streaming back on Facebook. All right. If anyone's watching live, let me know if you can see me and hear me okay. I hope you can. I'm recording this anyway, so even if you can't, we'll have a recording. But welcome to the broadcast. I'm going to dive in here in the first part and talk about the astrology of this particular full moon in Aries. We're going to talk about what house to work with for your sun and rising signs. We're going to talk about how you can recognize what it is you need to let go of. And tonight specifically, we're going to be talking about letting go of conflict and letting go of anger. And we're going to set the stage to kind of establish a clean slate going forward so that you can open your life up to growth, to adventure, to exploration, to new, to fresh, kind of move out of a conflict-oriented space, kind of move out of a space of holding on to anger that's not serving you any longer. And this is something that we've never talked about at the new moon in Aries before. If you're joining us live, if you want to say hi, I'm going to kind of bounce between the comments on both live streams. And it looks like we might get back onto YouTube. Let's see. Maybe. It's taking its sweet time. Kind of loading here. We'll see what happens. We'll check everything. Oh, the encoder says it's waiting for the stream. Goodness, what the heck today? Must be this Mercury retrograde and the fact that Uranus is conjoining the full moon. Anyway, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep going. Because I don't know what YouTube is doing. It's misbehaving. It disconnected and now it won't quite reconnect. I'm not sure why. It looks like it's trying to connect, but there's no go live button. So I don't know what the heck the issue is. And I apologize for that. But I'm just going to dive right in and talk about the full moon in Aries. Okay? So this full moon in Aries, it's yucky. I don't like it. I just want to tell you that right off the bat. It's a very tense full moon in Aries. There's a really tight conjunction between the moon and Uranus with this full moon. And that makes things complicated. It really stirs up our more aggressive nature, our more aggressive impulses, our conflict-oriented natures. Mars is retrograde. That doesn't really help. So that's a weakened position for the ruler of the full moon to be in. He's also in Pisces. You've got a fire planet in a water sign. That's not really very happy either. Mars is really weak. Now, in a way, that's good because Uranus is making things really kind of tense and unpredictable. And so if Mars is weakened, then hopefully there's less chance for that kind of volatility to do major damage in whatever way it could play out. But it tends to make us a little bit passive aggressive. Okay. And I want to call that out because passive aggressive behavior is toxic. So try to resist that impulse, please. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve anyone to be passive aggressive. And I'm going to switch my tabs over so that I am watching what's going on Facebook, since we're not actually streaming live on YouTube right now. And that way, if anyone has questions or comments from the Facebook feed, we can chat during the live stream. So yeah, Mars is retrograde. Mercury is retrograde. Okay. Although Mercury is going to station direct here pretty soon, actually right on election day here in the US. This passive aggressiveness, try not to engage in that because it doesn't serve anyone. It really is just not helpful and it's not healthy. If you're going to have conflict and anger come up at this full moon, just be direct about it and try to be patient. I know that's difficult when we're talking about Mars and we're talking about Aries, but patience will serve you. So just try to be patient, try to be a little understanding. Try not to poke the bear, as it were. But this full moon is really likely to be volatile, and that's kind of what concerns me. We have our collective passions being stirred up with the energy around this full moon. It contains the potential to be destructive, to be explosive. We could be prone to emotional outbursts, okay? And so with this full moon, where the risk is that we could experience setbacks and reversals, especially kind of out of the blue or in an unexpected way, and especially around broken agreements or compromises or going back on prior commitments, going back on our word, and that could cause issues in our interpersonal dynamics, right? The conflict could be destructive just due to the general impulsivity of the full moon. Full moons are kind of impulsive anyway, with Uranus in play especially more so. Okay. And this has really a lot to do with arguments, especially old arguments that may have been stirred up again at the last full moon. If you had old conflicts rear their ugly head at the last full moon that we had last month, then what you might see this month with this full moon is those conflicts coming to a head. Those arguments coming to a head where we just say to hell with it and make a break with the past. Okay? Now be aware, this full moon is ripe for feelings of disillusionment or disappointment, especially disappointment with the current state of things based on past decisions that we've made or courses of action that we took and how things panned out. And so really that disillusionment, that disappointment is feeding into this emotional nature of this full moon. It's feeding into the emotional volatility of this full moon. And we're looking really through that dissatisfaction to forge a new path ahead, even though the future remains really uncertain. And the future is uncertain just kind of due to the general nature of things. We're dealing with COVID still, right? All across the globe. We're still in the middle of a pandemic and no one really knows exactly when or how that will end or when or whether things will go back to normal, right? We're dealing with uncertainty, especially because we have Neptune squaring the lunar nodes right now, and that's going to continue for a little while. And we won't really feel that confusion or that lack of clarity move away until we get further into November. Okay, so you can expect that uncertainty to be kind of hanging around, to be like a fog over, gosh, what's the right way forward through mid-November. Once Mars stations direct, once we move out of the Mercury retrograde shadow, we'll start to get more clarity about what's the proper path ahead and what are the right actions to take. What's the best course of action for moving forward? But right now, things are coming to an end. And they're coming to an end in such a way that it may take a little bit of time before the smoke clears and we really kind of understand where we're moving on from now as we come out of the rubble of whatever is, kind of burned down around us at this point, right? And also around that time, around mid-November, the other thing I want to call out that's going to kind of add to the clarity and hopefully kind of set the stage as we move into the very end of 2020, we're going to have our final Jupiter-Pluto conjunction right around that same time. And all of this is going to be taking place as we lead into the next new moon, the new moon in Libra. Okay, so we're going to have all these events kind of coming together, and that new moon is going to be well timed to happen right as we're finally coming to a point where we maybe have more clarity about what's the best path forward, or at least what is kind of a good path forward that takes us more in the direction of where we want to go, because where we're at now is not where we wanted to be. And we're stuck in this place. We're dissatisfied with the outcome. We're dissatisfied with the state of things. We're dissatisfied with the results of the cumulative past decisions and actions we've been taking up till now. And that dissatisfaction just isn't sitting well. So it's time for all that crap to kind of end and to fade away. Sit tight for the next couple of weeks. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. Just take a breather. Kind of collect yourself. Let Mars and Mercury finish doing what they're doing. If you're in the United States, let the election cycle kind of settle out and finish doing what it's doing, and worry about what actions you're going to take going forward and what is the best path for you going forward as we move in closer to the new moon. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to call out is that we're in the final stages, or excuse me, the early stages. Let me say that properly. We're in the early stages of the final eclipse season of 2020, right? So the full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus coming up November 30th, and the new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio coming up December 14th. These comprise the final eclipse season of 2020. And we started this year with the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series, which was kind of winding down, right? We were going with that, that had been playing out for about 2 years. We were about at the 18-month mark when 2020 started, when COVID really came onto our radar. And then at mid-year, at the mid-year eclipse cycle, we began the transition where the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series wound down and the Taurus Scorpio eclipse series began. And that began with, I think we had our first full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio in June of this year. And so that launched this new eclipse series. Well, Gemini Sagittarius is pretty much done with. It's over. We're kind of wrapping, that series has wrapped up. We know what it wrought, what changes it brought. The icing on the cake as related to Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series is going to play out here in just a couple of weeks as we hit mid-November, and we have that final Jupiter-Pluto conjunction take place, because that is in Sagittarius. That's going to show us kind of the final shape of things. There's going to be one last big shift, you could say, one last big transformation come through in your Jupiter Sagittarius house. It must be Friday at the end of a long week, because my brains and my mouth don't work any longer. Forgive me. But the Gemini Sagittarius energy is really going to be wrapping up and moving through the final transitory stages with that conjunction. And the eclipse series that we have coming up at the end of November and mid-December is going to bring us more fully into the Taurus Scorpio eclipse series. So we're going to really be in the full swing of that as we move through year end. Everyone should have a clear idea at that point of what themes are going to be activated for them. Although keep in mind everyone's timing will be a little bit different as to what changes this eclipse series brings. Just depending on where the eclipse is over that 2-year time frame that Taurus Scorpio is going to be with us, just depending on what the degrees of those eclipses are going to activate in your own chart. And we'll take a closer look at all of those as we move through this eclipse series and as it unfolds. And to that point, I will be doing a broadcast somewhat later after the election is over, probably maybe more into the second week of November. I'll do a broadcast specifically about these two eclipses coming up and the degrees, the important dates and degrees that you'll want to know, and we'll take a look at how this will unfold even into the coming 12 months. So watch for me to post about that. I will touch on it just a little bit tonight, but watch for me to post about a more in-depth video coming up here in, I don't know, say a week and a half or so. Okay. And on that note, actually, you are going to possibly want to watch, and I can post a link to it, or I can follow up after the broadcast is over with a link to it. You're going to want to watch the eclipse video that I recorded, 3 important eclipse essentials that you need to know, just to kind of give you a refresher on how to effectively navigate the coming eclipse season. And like I said, watch for news about an updated broadcast on those eclipses. If anyone has questions, and I'm seeing that this link to my Sidereal tools calculator is not working, I'll have to take a look at the website and see what's going on and fix that. But if anyone has questions for me about the astrology of this particular full moon, go ahead and post them in the comments and we'll address those. And we'll move on at this point to part 2, where we talk about the houses this is falling into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign and what the themes of those houses are. Okay, so if you're pretty familiar, if you already kind of know what this is going to do for you, feel free to take a break, go get a refill on your drink, go grab a snack, whatever, and then come back and we'll dive into the prompts. But for everyone else, we're going to do a quick review of the houses. And so for Aries, kind of diving right in with this, if you have Aries rising, this will be, of course, a first house full moon, right? That has to do with appearance and self-expression. It has to do with your personality, your identity, your appearance, your physical body, your behavior, your mannerisms, how you show up in the world, the role that you play in the world, okay? If you have Taurus rising, this will be a 12th house full moon for you. So that has to do with privacy and seclusion. Has to do with spirituality, has to do with the unconscious mind and our unconscious beliefs, the unconscious beliefs that drive our behavior without us being aware of it. It has to do with our escapist tendencies, addictions, things like that. It's the house of seclusion and privacy, right? It's where we go to run away from reality. Also has to do with solo projects or things that you work on kind of in private behind closed doors. It's about rest and withdrawal and recuperation. Okay, for Gemini rising, right here, it'll be an 11th house full moon for you. This has to do with friends, organizations, hopes and dreams. The 11th house, of course, also has to do with potentially income from businesses that you own. What I like about full moons in the 11th house is that it's an opportunity to bring to fruition a long-held hope or dream that you may have had or that you may have been working on. And so if you've been working on a hope or dream that's near and dear to your heart, feel free to be wrapping up the finishing touches with this full moon and get ready to launch it into the world in the coming month, okay? For Cancer rising, this will be a 10th house full moon for you. So of course, career and achievement are related to the 10th house. Awards, recognition, fame, status, and reputation are all 10th house themes. For Leo, of course, this will be a 9th house full moon for you. So 9th house is international affairs, it's travel, it's immigration, it's long distance communication, it's publishing and broadcasting, it's legal matters. Did I say it's higher education? I hope so. Also religion, philosophy, law, those things are related to the 9th house as well. For Virgo, this will be an 8th house full moon for you. So that, of course, has to do with other people's money, has to do with resources that are at your disposal, especially your partner's resources if you have a partner. But it can also relate to things like inheritances, estates, wills, investment earnings, bonus and commission income if you earn money in that way, taxes, insurance, debts, things like that. The occult, death, rebirth, and transformation are also 8th house themes. For Libra, of course, this will be a 7th house full moon for you. So it has to do with partnership and marriage. It has to do with business matters potentially, especially business partnership as well as marriage partnership. The 7th house describes our relationships with other people in general, including open enemies and rivals. And if we're talking about the descendant, it specifically points to what we reject about ourselves and project onto other people. And so in that regard, it's excellent timing for doing some shadow work, for releasing things that may be holding you back in that regard, related to what you project onto other people and reject in yourself. Okay. For Scorpio rising, this will be a 6th house full moon for you. Of course, related to work, health, pets, your daily routines, schedules, and habits. employees if you have them. Full moons in the sixth house are really an excellent time for letting go of bad habits, especially for clearing out your schedule, getting rid of things that are taking up space in terms of your time that just don't serve you or are non-productive activities. And it's also a good time for eliminating unhealthy foods from your diet. Okay, so think about doing that if you have Scorpio rising with this full moon. For Sagittarius rising, this will be a fifth house full moon for you. So that has to do with creativity. It has to do with children. It has to do with love and romance, right? The fifth house also relates to things we do for pleasure. And so that can include sports. It can include hobbies. It can include creative activities like art, pleasurable activities, right? And then the fifth house also speaks to risk-taking and gambling. So if you've taken a risk lately, especially one related to Uranian activities, you could be seeing the payoff right about now. Now, I wouldn't go out on any kind of limb and state whether or not that payoff would be good or bad in your particular situation. That would be really relative to how this full moon is touching off things in your own natal chart, okay? And I say that just because with Uranus's influence and all the tense aspects going on with this full moon, it's really kind of iffy if that would be paying off in a good way or in a challenging way. Okay. For Capricorn rising, this will be a fourth house full moon for you. So that has to do with home and property. It has to do with family, especially your parents. And that can be one or both parents, whether it's one or the other, mother or father. It has a lot to do with your own natal chart and your own relationship with your parents and their own sun and rising signs. But that's usually easily discernible when you take a closer look at your own natal chart, but it can relate to both parents. For Aquarius rising, this will be a third house full moon for you. So, of course, travel and communication, but not long distance. It's travel and communication that happens nearby to you. It's local travel, local communication. Short distance travel, we could say. Also has to relate to mental activities, thinking, siblings, neighbors, environment, communication, things like that, commerce. With Mercury retrograde and Mercury being the natural ruler of the third house, you may be going back over some things or clearing up confusion around miscommunication, and you may run into travel snags. So I would definitely say if you have Aquarius rising, especially try and keep your schedule light, free, with room for some maneuverability, and definitely expect that you could have cancellations be happening as we wrap up Mercury retrograde. Okay. For Pisces rising, this is going to be a second house new full moon for you. So this one has to do with earned income and expenses. It has to do with possessions, wealth, movable assets, money you earn from the work that you do, things like that. You could see an expense come up with a full moon in the second house. You can also see, and this is kind of one of the things I like about it, especially if we're working with the 6-month cycles of new and full moons. When you have a full moon in the second house, it can be a time when you have the opportunity to boost your income. So for instance, full moons in the second house could see like a pay raise or something like that come your way, or some sort of boost to your income. And where this can especially be fruitful is if you took the time to find a way to increase your income at the last new moon in your second house. So in this case, the last new moon in Aries, for those of you who are Pisces rising. If you took steps to like start a side hustle or take a second job or ask your boss for a raise or something along those lines, and you've been working towards it steadily over the past 6 months, this could be the full moon where you really start to see that payoff and start to see the fruits of those labors show up in your bank account and your pocketbook. Okay. And so that really kind of wraps it for the houses and which house this full moon is falling into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. And so as we move into part 3, what we'll be doing now is talking about the Aries archetype, Aries themes, and going over some new prompts to explore ways that we can move past old stagnant energy that's holding us back and just not serving us any longer. And so as we talk about Aries, so Aries is cardinal fire, right? It's the constellation of the Ram. cardinal fire. So we consider it to be quite a passionate energy, quite a passionate sign. It's full of initiative, which is the energy of beginnings, right? Aries is, of course, seen as the newborn, the first sign of the zodiac. And so it's full of initiative, but quite frequently lacking in follow through. Okay. And that can be one of the drawbacks, one of the weaknesses when it comes to dealing with Aries energy. And especially with Mars retrograde, I think that could be showing up for us in some way with this full moon, where maybe we're having trouble following through, or maybe we're finally facing the fact that we haven't been following through and need to finally own up to it and kind of pay the piper, I guess you could say. Aries is considered, like I said, the first sign of the zodiac, and as such, it's the newborn, the optimist. It's full of unrealized potential. This is the germination of the seed, right? And so this is a great time to be thinking about seeds and seed planting and what comes after the seed has been planted. What's the end result that you are wanting ultimately? Especially as an opportunity for rethinking what you've gotten so far, considering Mars is retrograde. And this is an opportunity to maybe go back and take a different tack if you need to. Okay. So Aries is the warrior. It's like the archetype of the hired man, right? The mercenary, but also the trailblazing pioneer, the explorer. Aries is very naturally competitive, and I think we're seeing a bit of that come out, but maybe, like I said earlier, in some passive aggressive ways, maybe some not so healthy ways. It's competitive and filled with that drive to win. And often with Aries, where it falls in our chart, maybe where we see personal challenges from others that really, it's where none were intended, right? We might think people are trying to compete with us in that area of life, even when they're really not. We just kind of perceive it that way, right? So what I want you to do is kind of keeping in mind where in your chart Aries lands, and what house, what themes that house represents. I want you to consider the following prompts and questions as we move into the actual releasing portion of the broadcast. So I would urge you, with this full moon especially, to be thinking about picking your battles. When we're talking about Aries energy, oftentimes it's easy to just pick fights over nothing. Things that are unimportant or inconsequential. And that's really not necessary. It really doesn't serve us. It's very wasteful of our energy and our attention and our time. So with this full moon, I really want you to be cognizant of picking your battles. Where is repeatedly arguing over the same issue causing unnecessary and drama and conflict in your life? Unnecessary drama and conflict. Let go of that need for conflict, especially where you find yourself fighting that same battle over and over again with no resolution. It really does not serve you. Resolve to quit fighting endless battles. Resolve to quit arguing in circles. Learn to be done. This is a full moon for learning to walk away, for accepting when it's time to just walk away from whatever it is that you need to walk away from. Okay? This is a full moon for letting go of anger, especially anger that you've been holding on to, that you've been keeping bottled up inside potentially, but especially anger that you've been holding on to that's just eating you up inside. Learn to walk away from toxic people and toxic situations that are destructive to both your physical and mental health, but also destructive to your peace and your stability. Okay? This is a full moon where it's appropriate to walk away. Just let go of the anger by letting go of the entire situation. Release it. Okay? And then finally, this kind of relates a lot to the Uranian influence of the Uranus moon conjunction that we're going to be under with this full moon. Is reactivity causing you trouble in the area of life where Aries falls in your natal chart? Are you letting someone push your buttons and in that way control your behavior or manipulate your reactions or your emotional responses? Now, what I'm tying into this question for your consideration is the fact that we have some parallel and contra-parallel aspects going on with this particular full moon that bring Neptune into play, that bring Pluto into play, that bring Mars into play. And Pluto can be particularly manipulative in that way because Pluto is about energy of having insight into the psyche of others and knowing how to push their buttons. It's also very strategic energy. It's about being able to move kind of with some behind the scenes machinations and having a master plan, having a strategy that guides and informs your behavior and your activities as you interact with others. And so when you combine these two kinds of energies together and you combine them with the potential deceptiveness of Neptune, you can really set up a situation and environment that puts you in a position of potentially being manipulated by other people through emotional reactivity if they understand how to push your buttons and are willing to do so. So just be aware, be thinking about, is some kind of emotional reactivity causing you trouble in life again and again and again? Is it related to where Aries falls in your natal chart? Are you letting someone habitually push your buttons or maneuver you into situations where you tend to end up being reactive to what they're doing to you rather than being proactive or rather than being able to maintain your own self-control? Okay, and if that's the case, think about whether, again, this is a situation or a dynamic that maybe you just need to walk away from. Maybe you just need to call it quits, end things, distance yourself from that person or from that situation or from that environment so that you aren't putting yourself in that position any longer. Okay, so really with this full moon, that's kind of what we're looking at. This is a full moon around being willing to walk away, especially from fights you don't have a dog in, especially from fights that you've been having over and over and over again that don't lead to a resolution, where you're just spending your energy in conflict with another person or with a situation, and just not ever moving into a space of resolution. And if that's the case, ask yourself, is it holding you back to be doing that? Is it really serving your highest good to be wasting your energy engaging in the same type of conflict over and over again, to be arguing in circles? Is it serving you? Is it holding you back to be holding on to anger and not letting go of anger over a situation, over a person, over a dynamic that's going on in your life? Or can you find the inner courage to finally just walk away? Okay? Be willing to let go of conflict and anger when it's not serving you any longer and not healthy, not moving you forward, not bringing you resolution. Okay? So what I want you to do is take a moment to write down the ways in which you've identified these types of behaviors or energies or patterns or beliefs or what have you that aren't serving you any longer, that you can let go of, on a piece of paper. I'm going to do the same thing. When you're done, we're going to circle back around to our releasing practice, the actual releasing part of it, and we'll go from there. And let's see, I don't always do this at the full moon, but sometimes what's in my moon gazing journal is related to the full moon. So let's just take a peek ahead and see if this is full moon stuff going on here that we're working with at the freshest page. Nope. So we'll save this for the new moon coming up in Libra. That'll be fun. Okay. So I'm going to recap real quick those prompts. If anyone wants to get started, go ahead, dive right in. So here we are. Pick your battles. Where is repeatedly arguing over the same issues causing unnecessary drama and conflict? Right? That's a good question. Let go of the need for conflict, especially where you find yourself fighting that same battle over and over again with no resolution. Resolve to quit fighting endless battles and arguing in circles. Okay? Let go of anger. If you're carrying old anger, bottled up anger, especially anger that is eating you up inside, I encourage you at this full moon to walk away from toxic people, toxic situations, especially ones that are destructive to your physical or mental health, because carrying anger can be destructive to your physical and mental health, especially ones that are destructive to your own peace and sense of stability and the stability of your life. Okay? And then finally, I want you to consider whether reactivity is causing you trouble. In the area of life where Aries falls in your sidereal natal chart, are you letting someone push your buttons and in that way control your behavior or manipulate your reactions and emotional responses? And if so, consider whether getting some distance between yourself and this person or this situation isn't possibly in your best interest. So I would encourage you with this full moon, just be willing to let things go. Be willing to walk away from conflict and anger, especially if it's holding you back or no longer serving your highest good. Find that inner courage. That's what Mars retrograde is really about, finding our inner courage. And with this full moon, it's really an opportune time to finally call it quits with something that's just stirring the pot for you in kind of a never-ending way. Okay? All right. So here we go. Now I need to think of, how does this apply to me? Oh. All right. Wow, big. Not what I was expecting. If you need more time, especially if you're watching the replay, feel free to pause this before proceeding. I, of course, am going to share my releasing on the broadcast, and if you so choose, I would invite you to do the same in the comments below, whether you're watching from Facebook or watching from YouTube, or even if you're watching from the website when I eventually get this uploaded. I know that the website hasn't been updated very much at all this year, and I apologize for that. It's been really kind of a challenging year. Not the least of which is because I fell ill with COVID in March and became a long COVID experiencer, which is not any fun, and it has made life unpredictable, although I think we're on the mend finally, which is good news. We've been throwing every tool and trick in our arsenal and at our disposal at the problem in the quest for healing. And I think we're really making progress there. And so I'm excited for that. I feel like I finally have most of my energy back. And as we move through the rest of this election season, I'll have my schedule and my time back. And then hopefully I'll be more present for you all and more available for you all and back in the swing of things very soon. And I appreciate your patience with me as we've gone through this. And I do invite you, please, to share what it is you're letting go of in the comments. It is always really special to see what you are ready to move beyond. And I would love to share those experiences with you as we go through this particular full moon. So this was kind of interesting. I wasn't sure at first because I have Gemini rising and this would be an 11th house full moon. And I was thinking about it in terms of, like we were saying, anger and conflict. And I really don't have You know, I don't have any friends that I'm angry with, right? I don't have any friends that I'm in conflict with. I don't really have any kind of anger or conflict going on in relation to like organizations that I belong to, things like that. Then I looked at it from the Capricorn perspective, which makes it a fourth house full moon. And I thought, well, gosh, you know, there's not really anything there either that kind of fits the bill. But then I had an epiphany. And so this works a lot with the 11th and the 5th houses for me, which of course the 5th is the opposite of the 11th, right? And so that's kind of where I'm going with this tonight. And I see Dylan's on. Yay, Dylan, it's so good to see you. Dylan says, now is the time I finally pack up my ex's stuff to send him. Ooh, that's good. And I want to release the grief that has accompanied the whole relationship and the actions of my unpacking. Yes, Dylan, I like that. And you touch on something that I touch on in mine as well, grief. I have spent a good portion of this year and the second half of last year in a space of grief, processing just huge amounts of grief around multiple topics, all related to relationship and to love and to, in my case, motherhood. And that's kind of what I was touching on with this. What comes to mind, I don't know, maybe Dylan, if you're familiar with this. It's a meme that I've encountered a couple of times online over the years. About I sat with my anger long enough. How does it go? I sat with my anger long enough. She told me her real name was Grief. Yeah. And I think for a lot of us, that is the case. That anger is an expression of grief that we've not yet recognized. And for me, I feel like in a lot of ways, I don't necessarily struggle with the grief part, right? Like I can get to grief and I can get to grief pretty quickly and easily when it's the right situation. But the other thing that I was thinking of as I wrote out what I was letting go of tonight, I was thinking about how anger, because anger's Mars, right? And Mars is boundaries. We've talked about this before in some past broadcasts about how, like when you have your first Mars return is right around the age of 2 years old, right? Because Mars moves in these 2-year cycles. And so that's when you have your terrible twos is what we call them. And that's when you're first learning boundaries. You're learning to establish your own wants and desires and needs, and you're learning to say no. And anger is a part of that. Anger is a big, 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 strong emotional clue that a boundary of yours has been violated. And sometimes we don't recognize that in the moment, but anger always points to where a boundary has been violated. And so especially in terms of what we talked about during the prompts, if you're having these repeated cycles of conflict with someone that never come to resolution, if you're having these, if you're holding on to anger, dig deep into that and ask yourself, what boundary violation is this anger pointing to? And have I learned to honor and express that boundary yet? Ask yourself, what boundary violation is repeatedly cropping up, that this argument repeatedly crops up, that this conflict around it repeatedly crops up, and who is it, and how is it, and why is it that someone in my life is repeatedly violating one of my boundaries? And ask yourself, how long will you continue to let that stand? Because you shouldn't. You should honor your own emotional space. You should honor your needs. You should honor how you're willing to be treated, acceptable ways of being treated and standards of behavior. And your anger is there to show you where those boundaries are. And you can honor your anger best by recognizing that and by letting that clue you into what those boundaries are, and then by stepping in and expressing those boundaries, honoring those boundaries, reinforcing those boundaries, outlining consequences to people who violate those boundaries, and then holding firm into what those consequences are, right? And not backing down when people think it's fun or okay or cute or acceptable to repeatedly violate your boundaries, okay? Because it's not okay. It's not okay at all. And people should understand that there's consequences for it. And if they can't alter their behavior in light of you honoring your boundaries, then perhaps it's time to just move on from the situation, from the environment, from the person, whatever it is. Okay? So here's what I wrote, now that I've blathered on about that a bit. So I wrote, and this is big for me, that it's my intention to release any unresolved or unrecognized anger around feeling cheated out of or deprived of the opportunity to fulfill my dream of motherhood. And I know for a fact that it's that feeling of deprivation and being cheated out of and not having had that opportunity yet in my life that really underpins my grief. But I don't know how much of the anger underpins the grief, right? Usually we think that grief underpins the anger, and maybe that's the case. But I'm open to being shown whether or not those are flipped for me in my situation, right? And so here's what I continued with. I intend to invite any such anger out into the open to be fully felt, fully honored, fully processed, so that I may move forward into my full creative power and potential. I invite it into my conscious experience to be recognized and received, so that I may learn the lesson that it has for me. And I do this in gratitude for that lesson. Let's see if I can get this to light now. It was lighting just a minute ago. I don't know, guys. I don't know. It lit when I was burning the incense. Why is my lighter not lighting? Let's see if I have another one. I don't know if I do. Poopies. I might have to burn this after the fact. I don't think I have another good lighter up here. Oh, sorry. Clanking around. But that's what I want to let go of with this particular full moon in Aries. I have my moon in Aries, actually. Let's see if I can. I don't know why. It's just not lighting. Why? There's a lighter in my coat pocket downstairs. I may have to just wait and hold off on this one. It's got fluid. So it's not that. It's just not sparking. Maybe it's not bent to me in this moment. Meant to be is how that was supposed to come out. Maybe it's not meant to be in this moment. I have this one, but this one doesn't look like it has any lighter fluid in it. And I just don't think I have anything else to use. I think yeah, that's what I get for, not being a smoker anymore. No lighters to speak of. Imagine that. Anyway, I'm going to burn this later. But this is what I want to let go of and release with this full moon. And I recognize that the way for me to let go of or release any unrecognized or unprocessed anger is by inviting it out into the open. Inviting it into a place where it can be fully felt and fully processed. And like I said, fully honored, right? Because when we are willing to feel our anger, even if we don't act on it in the sense that we don't yell and scream and whatever, follow these urges that we might in the moment. Even if we invite it out into the open to be felt, we give it space to be honored and recognized. And it's when we don't honor it, when we don't recognize it, when we try to quash it, when we try to smoosh it down or bottle it up, or reject it because anger's bad and it feels bad and it makes us uncomfortable, right? That's when it just causes problems for us, because any of our emotions that we try to do that with, when we try to stuff them, they will find expression in some way. And most of the time, that way is unhealthy. Okay? And so this is an opportunity to be moving through unprocessed anger and resolving unresolved conflict in such a way that you can allow it to move out of your life and out of your expression in a healthy way, in maybe even a more permanent way, but also in a way that's not going to come back out in some other unpredictable manner, in some other unhealthy manner. Okay? So I want to invite you to be with that and to sit with that, with the full moon releasing practices. And I feel weird that I haven't burned this, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take it when I'm done here. I'm gonna go find some fire, and I'm gonna burn this, because I really am just ready to. But as you release it with gratitude, release it with love, release it with appreciation for the lesson that the anger has brought into your life, and do your best, do your work to identify what is that lesson, because that lesson is almost always around a boundary that's been violated, and sometimes where this trips us up is that it's our own responsibility to establish our own boundaries, right? And so sometimes that anger is maybe partly at the other party that we think is the cause of it, but also to some small degree, that anger is also probably at ourselves for not having stood up for ourselves and for our own boundaries earlier or sooner, and prevented a lot of the pain and heartache that comes along with that kind of theme of recurring conflict in our lives, or the theme of bottled up anger that we've been carrying around. And so I want to thank you all for joining me tonight on this live stream. I'm going to scroll down. I thought I had my notes all ready for you, and mostly I did, at least up to this point. I didn't really go through and look to whether or not I had any announcements or news for you. So I just kind of want to scroll through and see if there's anything that I want to bring up. So mainly what I wanted to kind of underscore with this broadcast is we're actually already into, it started late September, so about a month ago. The first initial phase of the final eclipse season of 2020 got underway at the end of September. And normally we would have talked about this by now, but at the end of September, I was hip deep in election work. That's kept me busy for about 50, 60 hours a week at this point. Now that's due to wrap up soon. I know I've said that before, because I said the same thing in August and September. And normally the type of election work that I do takes me away from this for all of like a day. This year has not been that case. It's been a lot more involved and a lot more time intensive and a lot more demanding. And it will be for about another week or so before I can free myself from it long enough to come back to y'all with my full attention. And so I thank you for your patience in that regard. I would encourage you to go back and rewatch my Eclipse video, 3 important eclipse essentials you need to know, because that will give you the guidance that you need to know how to navigate this eclipse season in a general sense, because it has to do with eclipses in particular, and eclipse season is something we deal with 2 to 3 times a year. And then stay tuned, because after we come out of the November 3rd election, I will have my notes ready to do a broadcast for you about this particular eclipse season, which relates to our upcoming, what did I say? Is it we have a new moon in Scorpio in December on the 14th, and a full moon lunar eclipse November 30th in Taurus. And so that's where we're at. And I want to talk about those in more specificity. I want to talk about the nature of those eclipses themselves from an astrological standpoint. I want to call out the important dates and degrees that you're going to need to be looking at in your own natal chart to know if you're going to be personally affected by those eclipses. And I want to arm you with the dates to watch for in the coming 12 months. So as we move through 2021, the dates to watch for as events unfold related to these two upcoming eclipses. And so stay tuned for news about that with an announcement about when we're going to have that broadcast, and feel free to join me live, and hopefully that will go more smoothly than this one is. I'm glad you're able to join us, Dylan. I wasn't quite sure how things were working out, and we're supposed to be broadcasting to YouTube right now, and we're just not because there was some kind of hitch there. But thank you all for joining me. It's good to see you. It's good to be back. I've enjoyed this immensely, and for those of you who are subscribed to the YouTube channel, I'm going to get you a broadcast uploaded here in short order, hopefully before the morning, so that you'll have this broadcast in time to time it with the full moon tomorrow, because of course I'm broadcasting on the 30th and our full moon is on the 31st. Halloween coming up very soon. Thank you all for joining me so much. I'm just thrilled to be here and thrilled to be on with you, and we'll see you all again next time. Thanks so much.